Hello and welcome to Cracked Open, a podcast guiding you on your journey to becoming a vessel of unconditional love. And this is your host, Beck Milonas, High Priestess, Channel, and Activator. Join me on this series as I share reflections, insights, and channel transmissions from my journey of walking the initiation path. Each episode is a unique transmission containing supportive frequencies to facilitate the deepest healing, activation, and reconnection with your soul. I invite you to open your mind and set the intention to receive this episode into your heart space. Let's go. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode of Cracked Open, a podcast guiding you to becoming a vessel of unconditional love. I've decided that today, and maybe even every podcast forward, let's see, I'm going to let you in on the little process that I do when I'm opening a podcast. So you guys don't see me do this. I've done this for every single episode yet. And I'm going to take you on the journey to see what happens when I'm inviting someone onto the show. So I've got Michelle Hobson on here with me. I will introduce her officially, but we're just going to set the container for today's episode. As you know, these are activations. So we're just going to close down our eyes, and I invite you to join us in doing this. And as usual, if you don't wish to receive any energetic activation through this transmission, just say I do not consent or I do not desire it, and it won't have to be. But if you do desire it, then go ahead, close down your eyes. And I'm now opening up this container, this grid for today's session. I'm asking my soul team, Michelle's soul team, to co-create and collaborate on creating a grid now to hold this recording, this episode, this transmission, creating a transmutation grid within that grid, or a portal for any clearing that needs to be done. Calling forth sacred protection, declaring that this is a sacred space and only that which is of the highest vibration, serving love and light, serving the law of one is permitted to be here. I'm inviting Michelle to stream through her oversoul, her highest self, any codes, any messages that the beautiful people who are coming to this episode need to hear, and I'm doing the same now. Divine Mother, Father, God, I open myself up as a vessel, a channel, an oracle for Source. May the messages that those need to find be received. May all of those who are here to receive this be brought to this in divine timing. So it is, and so it is, and so it is. And we request that upon completion of listening to this episode, this grid dissolves. Everything is dissolved in crystalline diamond light, and so it is. And I'm going to do that from now on every time, because I think it's a really great way to drop into the fact that these are fucking multidimensional things. So hello, Michelle. How was that for you?
That was great. Yeah, I just saw like before I even said, "Hey, like Michelle, come in," and I was like already taking my little weaving of light, starting to connect. So I was like, "Oh, I'm already there."
When two activators play together in the space. So I don't know, I just felt like today there's a good time to do it. So people can feel, because I think a lot of people feel things in these episodes, but they don't know what they're feeling. And it's like, consciously, this is an activation if you want to be activated. And as we were talking about, we just did another episode. There's also this whole thing around consent, and not like just activating people without giving them you might get activated. You don't have to get activated. Setting clearer boundaries around that. So I'm going to shut up about that for a sec. We'll come back to it maybe. But I'm going to introduce Michelle. So Michelle and I had the privilege of briefly meeting a couple years ago. We were going to maybe co-create on something. It didn't kind of come through. And then we've come around again. Spirits brought us back together. Here we are. So she's a multidimensional healer, a subconscious reprogramming expert, and the founder of Divine Light Weaving Academy. She's a light language queen and the host of the Sacred Rebellion podcast, which I just had the privilege of speaking on. So welcome. You're also very galactic. I feel that energy from you. And as we were opening, I was like, oh, this is like a big galactivation coming through. So
Yeah.
please, in your own words, introduce yourself, introduce the work that you do. Tell us a little bit about yourself for those here listening to you and feeling you.
Well, I am a mother of two, been happily married for 16 years, been with my partner almost 18. So, relationships and home life are extremely important to me. I homeschool my children because that's what works best for us. And originally, I got a degree in teaching. So, I have that's kind of been my love, is really sharing knowledge and information and coming from a place of really diving into who you are and really stepping into those confident codes and authenticity and bringing forward, like, yeah, we can talk galactic, but I've never really identified as, quote, like, oh, I'm a Pleiadian or I'm, and Arcturian. I've always just connected to, like, I'm probably everything, to be honest with you. I'm an old soul. I've always has been. I grew up super gifted in a very, typical Mormon household in Idaho. And, my parents didn't really know how to handle someone that talked to walls and saw dead people and communicated or knew things that didn't really necessarily make sense. In fact, when I talked to my father, who's, typical military guy, and my mother is a school teacher, he's like, we thought you had schizophrenia. Like, like they're like, we didn't know what to do with you. So highly gifted. Being raised in religion, it really taught me to kind of hide from my gifts. And the more I hid from them, the more it just got darker, right? So the more I hid from who I truly was, the darkness and the psychic attacks and the overwhelming and overstimulated and all of that energy of feeling not enough, really my entire life, just amplified. And so with each one of my children, I had an awakening. With my son that's 13 now, I had him, and before I had him, I just wanted to be the best mom I could be. I wanted to really be someone that my children would be proud of, to be like, hey, that's my mom, and not ever feel like, oh, she's not somebody I really want to be around. And then when I had my daughter, 4.5, almost 5 years later, my kids are broke out apart from each other. I had a dark night of a soul, and it was really dark. I had postpartum, probably psychosis. And I ended up going to a doctor for depression. And because I just couldn't I didn't have the tools. I didn't know how to, like, stop the psychic attacks. I didn't have, I just felt constant darkness. So I went to a doctor. I ended up getting on some antidepressants. This might be a trigger word, but I ended up getting on antidepressants, and the voices got louder. And that's when I realized, like, I can't hide from my gifts anymore. This isn't going to work. I can't continue to hold on to this darkness because it's just too much. And I actually contemplated, like, being done with life because I couldn't be in that space. I'm really proud I'm not crying right now because that's typically where I go. That's the stage of healing, right? And I remember the day that I had actually planned it, and my 4.5, almost 5-year-old came out, and he said to me, Mommy, I just love you so much. I just don't know what I would do without you. And I was like, oh, I can't leave him, And so it's like that little, like, he saved my life, and he may never understand that fully, but he saved my life, and he may have saved lots of other people. That ripple effect of, like, how many people have I personally touched their lives through the divine source and being that channel for God, and for him to say, hey, like, you're enough. Like, I need you here. I need you as a mom. So throughout the years, I've just slowly learned my first basic foundational aspects of myself were hypnosis. Like, I was all in the mind, right? Everything that the loud voices, the energies. So I essentially got my certification in hypnosis, and I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. It's like diving into people's belief systems in their mind. Like, some people are like, ugh, I don't want to go into somebody's mind, but it's fascinating. And to see how people tick and the stories. And the stories are the same. They're just a different person. And so I quickly understood, as I was putting people into trance, how good I was at it. I was like, ooh, I have kind of a hypnotic voice. Like, people like this, right? And I'm seeing people just drop in, like, really quickly, and seeing people's beliefs and ideologies. And then I started to see, right? I've always been able to see, but then I started to really see the quantum field. And that's where I started to really dive into, a little bit of tarot, like, trying to figure out, like, how do I move this energy? Do I just pick it up? Do I move it? Do I pull it? Do I do these things? And yeah, so that's kind of how, a little bit of my story and where I'm at today. Yeah. I know that was a
Amazing.
lot.
Thank you for sharing. And I definitely, those who've listened to me talk, I have a similar, I mean, I don't have children, but I have a similar history of like getting to that point. I was on antidepressants as well. It didn't fix anything. It just kind of numbed the situation. And for me, it was like, yeah, that point of like, I will take my own life if something doesn't change. So I could completely resonate. I also really resonate with what you said about like not being attached to one, which the next thing I'm gonna ask you is like, so it's like the end, like complete opposite to what I'm about to say, which is funny because Spirit was saying "Wah," in my ear, and I was like, really? She's just said, but what I was gonna say was not resonating with I'm just this one, right? For the starseed lineages, I think we all have many. In fact, we have 12 strands of different DNA from different places. So we all have many different ones that we resonate with. As I say that though, they were saying, I remember you posting something about Mintaka. Are you open to talk? There's something
Yeah.
about Mintaka that
Yeah.
wants to come through. They were like, ask her about Mintaka. I'm like, okay, let's talk about Mintaka. What is Mintaka? Because I have a Orion heritage. And again, like I'm not fucking attached. And anyone who listens to this
Yeah.
for a long time, I talk a lot about this stuff and how not attached I am. But it's there, it's present. Like I speak the light language sometimes, and it's like it's like
Yeah.
crazy. It's fucking
Yeah.
a crazy one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So I was actually in the shower one day. I get a lot of I'm Scorpio, like so much Scorpio, like water. I'm a water baby. And I was in the shower and I turned to the left. It's always the left. I don't know about you, but like I turned to the left to grab something and all of a sudden I just got hit. And I was like, full cognitive memory of like being in a room with a bunch of beings. I'm standing there having a conversation. And for me, this is where like I have a really good bullshit meter. And I'm sitting there telling them, like, hey, this isn't what should be happening. And in a nutshell, what I downloaded that day was, and take resonates, delete what doesn't, right? What I resonated that day was some Orion beings wanted to actually mine things off of Mintaka, and it was natural resources. And what I saw when I was there was like part of it had island, but a lot of it was water. So you had like land people and different tribes. And in the different tribes, it reminds me actually when I see it, a lot of love. Oh my gosh, what's the Disney movie with all the Avatar? It reminds me a lot of Avatar. Kind of that same scenery where you have like tree people, water people, right? Where you have different type of beings. And it looks, I'm getting like lightheaded talking about it. I don't know about you, but it's like super activation right now.
Well,
And
I was watching Avatar 2 the other day again, and I was like hysterical. From the fucking minute it started, I was like, the waterworks were on, and they were talking about, oh my God, my whole body. Like that movie hits something deep because every time I
oh,
watch it, I'm a blubbering mess. So I can,
yes,
yeah, it could be
yes.
this connection that and the one that just went was like the way of the water. It's all about the water and the Amri. Anyway, I'm shutting up now. Shutting up.
Totally. Yeah. So the way I understood it was I was the spokesperson for Mintaka with the council. So I went and had a conversation and I said, we're not mining here. We're not doing that. We're not going to do that to the planet. This is, and it was like that connection of the oneness. And I was like, we're not doing that. Like I've talked to the other tribal, because there was different tribes that had quote queens, and it was a matriarch society. So it was queens that ran the show. And so what I understood, well, what ended up happening was there was a virus that they ended up implanting into the planet, and then they blew up the planet. So in a nutshell, like I saw the betrayal. Well, there was massive betrayal and it felt very manipulative. And it brought in so much of this like betrayal, grief energy that I've been storing, and essentially guilt, that I was responsible. It was like this sense of responsibility, like over ownership, which is totally my personality even today. It's like I over owned for years. And in a nutshell, I told the council, like, these are people that we shouldn't trust. And I was not taken at face value. And then my people thought I had lied to them. So it felt kind of like betrayal energy, but honestly, like I wasn't in that space. And to get people out, we had to work through the different tunnels. And a lot of us on there were shapeshifters. So we could move from land to water, and kind of that Syrian woo activation, shapeshifting from like land people to essentially kind of like a siren energy, and moving into the crystalline crystal cities in the water. And it very much kind of looks like Aquaman, that kind of vibrant, like moving energy and lots of lights and things like that. So it's always fascinating. Marvel movies are super activating for me. I don't know if they are for you, but they are. I don't watch very many of them until Spirit's like,
Yes.
hey, you should
Yeah.
watch this.
100% they are. And I'm like, what the is no one else seeing this? Like,
Yeah,
what? I
yeah,
love them. I
yeah,
love them. I was watching
yeah.
Black
So
Panther.
Aquaman,
iron
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Aquaman was super activating because it was like that's kind of how the crystalline cities even worked with like Lemuria. And I've done a lot of regressions with Lemuria, but it's a very similar story with Lemuria where the Atlanteans came in, wanted the crystals, and the crystals were not in highest good for the Atlanteans to know how to use, so they didn't get the technology, and then they ended up blowing up Lemuria. And a lot of Lemurians, people don't realize this, yes, some of them did drown, but a lot of them went into the waterways. Same with Atlantis, went into the waterways. The shapeshifters went into your whale people and sirens that still exist today that a lot of people don't realize or don't believe in, but mermaids are very much existing today in our planet, in our three-dimensional reality that people don't understand. But I've done enough regressions because I also have a certification in quantum healing, like regression and past life regressions, where I've seen and I've heard enough people who don't even believe in past lives drop into those lives where they're like, whoa, I shapeshift, I move this way. So very, very like how that repetitiveness moves, and then the Orion Wars started. So that's the way I understand the galactic aspects. Again, I don't read a lot of books. This is just my own channel, what I experienced, take or leave it how it was. But then Mintaka was destroyed, and when I go to Mintaka now, it looks just like a dark planet. There's still water there, and it's still, you could technically still go. There's no resources because they essentially took them, and I see a little bit of that happening today, and that's probably why it's a little bit triggering for a lot of us that mining and like digging into Gaia and that connection of like disconnection of the oneness, the Mintaka. Well, Mintakan people have the wound that comes up for a lot of them is betrayal and a lot of grief, and it sits in the heart space. And that heart space can be like when I did my free, I actually have a free like workshop that I did where it actually opens up that grief, drains it, and then puts the blue heart back into your chakra of your heart space so that it can expand and you can start trusting people again. And that's my story on Mintaka.
Amazing. So much was energetically moving and happening as you were saying that. And even that, I feel like even you just saying that little bit of the grief release, just speaking into it is helping it to clear from the field. So that's really beautiful. And I definitely resonate with the mermaid energy. I've remembered being a mermaid. I'm looking down and it says Beck's swimwear. That is fucking hilarious. There's a box on the bench and it says Beck's swimwear. What is it like as I'm talking about being a mermaid? Yeah, okay, cool, I get it. That's crazy. Because the
Yeah.
mermaids also held the sacred union grids, right? And the mermaids also were like infiltrated to have babies with humans and their wombs were destroyed. So that's a whole other thing. I don't know if you heard about this? Have you tapped into this about the mermaids holding soulmate grids and then like there's all this if you have mermaid lineage, you probably feel called to there's someone there for you and humans and Atlanteans were um, they started distorting these templates because they were implanting mermaid women with human like babies and it fucked them up. Did you hear about this?
No, but I do a lot of siren energy. I have a parallel life right now that's running out that is a siren energy. So, I mean, a siren woman who is actually in partnerships with a human man and she shapeshifts into human and has moved the energy. So I'm not surprised that you're talking about it because, you got union
Yeah.
codes over here.
And speaking of like Marvel movies, I was going to say this when you were talking. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was watching Wakanda Forever. Again, it's like just all these movies just came 11/11 came into my awareness like literally within the past 2 weeks. I've watched them all, but they've come back in. Wakanda Forever, there's like a Mayan connection, so it's like it goes even deeper. There's a Mayan connection and a connection to Quetzalcoatl Kukulkan, who's like the feathered serpent god, and that's a dragon. I talk about this in my book. But there was also the mermaid people, right? Like the underwater people, and then Avatar. Yeah, so it's all crazy. It's like crazy. It's all there. So I love that, and big activations there. Okay, let me feel for. I was going to ask about the Mormon piece. What's your relationship? This is completely, this is how these podcasts work. It's like, here's a thread, and then God's like, go here, and then I go here, and it's like somewhere completely different, another tangent. Talk to me about, what your relationship now to the concept of God is, and if having that very, like, again, it was hard religious upbringing, like, I say hard, and like, there's lots of boundaries and rules, and, Mormons are very strict. If that if there was some unraveling that you had to do or unpacking or deconditioning to kind of get to your position now where you are and like what is your relationship with God?
Yeah, so I started to unravel religion probably in 2016. I mean, my husband and I've never been super active in the church, but like we didn't really start to unravel it to probably maybe 2017, and I was really just dived into what do I believe? like what do I believe? What do I want to believe as an adult? Because um I don't know if I want to believe in this, which is like, I mean, I got generations of Mormonism in my DNA line, or am I looking at to like maybe Christianity? Like religion has always been something that I've always had this ideology of pleasing God, right? Pleasing God and being like in a space of like that, which is totally Mormon, right? And like moving into the energy of like, I just want to like have, God happy, which is religion trauma of like constantly looking for something outside of yourself and not really internalizing it. So I had a complete deconstruction of Mormonism, and went through all of the history aspects of it, and then my husband had the same thing happen where he did deconstruct and dive deep of Mormonism. And I won't talk too much on behalf of his, but in my aspect, it was like I didn't really have to read a whole lot to know that it wasn't true. Does that make sense? I'm like, is this anchored in truth? Like, is there really such thing as this? But like, my gifts as a child at 16 years old, when I'm seeing full apparitions in my room and I can't explain what I'm seeing, and what's happening here, right? I can see my mom's dead sister that was stillborn, like, this is demonic, this is bad, your house is possessed. It's like always negative, right? And so that was kind of my perception. So as my gifts activated more, I'm like, this isn't bad. Why is this such a, when you open up, like, I had someone explain to me one time, sorry to ramble, but like, they were like, oh, if you open up the Pandora's box, you open all of it. So just keep it closed. It's like kind of that ideology. But as I deprogrammed myself, I had to really deprogram like good girl syndrome. That was a huge one. People pleasing of, not having to show up in a certain way or dress a certain way or not being revealing or, having to be conservative, right? And I also had to really program patriarchy, like having that patriarch system of like, I don't need to serve my husband, like we're partners. And so him and I have both like deprogrammed, like, I get you're the man, but like I don't give a shit, right? Like we're partners, we're together, there's this harmony. And so him and I both are big advocates of partnership instead of you're the husband, I'm the wife, like typical wife husband roles, right? And so he's the type of person that is very active in our children's life, does dishes, does laundry, does clean, all the things, and he's very consciously aware of a lot of those roles that men typically don't play, right? It's like, oh, I make all the bacon, so I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna just sit on the couch and play on my phone. That's not how my spouse works. So we had to really work through a lot of that, and I think that the thing is too is like, obviously, like I awakened before he did, right? But we've never been. Him and I are both very aware of corruptions and big pharma and all those things. Like we had a lot of those similarities of awakening experience, but the awareness of like inner child work, shadow work, things like that, he's probably just barely, like he's tiptoed his way through that, where it's just kind of starting now. Where like I've been diving into this for a while. Does that make sense? So religion wise though, we don't raise our children in any form of religion. We don't attend religion. That's pretty normal around here. You want to come to the baptism? No, we'll go to the luncheon, but we're not going to come to the baptism. Like, and I've had to explain to my children, like, they'll in Mormonism, they believe in the quote Holy Ghost. And, my son was like 8, I think. And we went to it was like probably one of our last things we went to. And he's like, so they're giving him his intuition? Doesn't everybody have that? So it's like, I'm just done explaining how I can make that fit into the narrative of false light. Does that make sense? And so that's where we are a religion. We're not Mormon at all. We don't participate in any of the things. I had to almost like strip down to not believe in anything, right? Like completely, I don't believe in anything. I don't believe in, I just, I have to like completely pull back all the layers of just believing in nothingness to go there. And now at this point in my life, I believe God is an energetic frequency. And when I see it in my mind's eye, the masculine energy of it's very sun energy. It's very yellow. It's very bright. It's white. And the feminine energy is more of a womb space, right? Where it's like this energy of birth and creation and things like that. So when I do work, I take people into a womb energy of the feminine energy, or if we're working into the masculine aspects of God, we're going to work with more of that sun energy and that more like frequency of gold light. but they're different, but they're also the same. They're one and the same. It's like I can see both of them, but they're a little different for me. And but when people ask me around here, like, hey, do you believe in God? I'm like, oh, you're white sky daddy? No, I don't. Sorry. You know, like, no, I don't believe in white sky daddy. But I definitely believe in an energetic source frequency that all is, was, and will be. And that energy to me is just this beautiful crystalline, um, kind of like this rainbow, a light of energy that just feels like divine love. And that's all it is. It's divine love. It's who I am. It's within me. And it's the creation energy, and it's what vibrates through my body. And that's what I connect to. And yeah, that's what I think God is.
Awesome. I mean, I have very similar perception. I see it as like a triple flame. The father, the mother, or the sorry, the the masculine, the feminine, and the holy child. Like the three was the Christos, the Sophia Christos, but it's a very similar, like the feminine aspect, the masculine aspect, and then they come together to create this androgyne or child, which is kind of us, and then we're embodying all of them. So that's really beautiful. I'm curious, you talked about being very activated and gifted as a youngster, what that was like, and how you were protecting yourself back then. If yeah, you were going through this and you were just kind of open, like at what age were you like, wait, other people aren't seeing this? Like, what was that experience like? And how would, if someone had a gifted child now, how would you um suggest they nurture that child or do it differently in the ways that you weren't raised?
Yeah, so a lot of gaslighting, right? Like, oh, you don't really actually see that. You're not actually talking to a person. No, that's not true, right? A lot of gaslighting, which is what they knew, right? Like they couldn't see it, they didn't understand it. I would say my mother's pretty intuitive. And so, when I would say things like, I really noticed it pretty hefty, like actually remembering around the time my grandfather died around the age of 10. And just like cognitive memory, as I like think about like when was the first time. And I started, I remember he died, and I was really close to my grandfather, and he died of cancer. And I remember walking outside and seeing this like very distinct, it was so it was like these clouds with the sun coming through, and you can see all the rays touch all the way to the ground, which now I'm like, oh, it was like grounding energy, right? Like the rays of light grounding the frequency. And I remember walking out and seeing that and being like, oh my God, my grandfather's going to heaven, right? Like that was like kind of the first ideology, like the really just like, oh, he's going to heaven. Like, look, the heavens have opened, right? And later that evening, I started to have like essentially nightmares where it was just like, and not necessarily they were associated with him, but it was like, of him not going to heaven and those fears coming forward. And now realizing like waking up in a panic and night terrors and a lot of psychic attacks as a child, right? And the other thing too, I don't think a lot of people realize is like I'm very empathic. So I feel I'm very clairsentient. I feel a lot of energy. So when I go into a grocery store, it's like, okay, pep talk. I'm gonna ground my energy. I'm gonna crystalline energy. Like I've got all these grids on me. I grid my children. I grid, walk through the door, and then I'm like, whew, and then I walk out and I'm like, I can feel it. It's just heavy. And as a child, that was like my normal energy, is constant heaviness. I know I slept a lot. I was sick a lot. So that's how I processed energy through my body. So the sickness, the excessive tiredness. And then as I went into my teen years, I around this age of 16, it hit again. So it was like huge wave of like seeing and feeling, being able to like communicate, and it terrified me. Like I remember being really terrified of any energy that I heard, and I constantly heard energies like voices, and I'd say, "Did you say something?" And they're like, "Nope. Nope, I didn't say anything." I'm like, "Oh, I swear I heard something," right? Like it's those energies of understanding, but I had no idea. And I think my parents did what they knew, they had the bishop come in and like bless the house, but it was very confusing because um it's kind of funny in religion, you get like a patriarchal blessing where it's like someone from divine is giving you a blessing and it's like all written down and it's like kind of your purpose. And it's really ironic that Mormonism doesn't believe in like channeling, because that's exactly what that's supposed to be, even though it's not really. It's like everyone has the same message. It's just kind of like works here. But in that message, it said, "Oh, you were a faithful servant to God and helped escort the third out of the gates of heaven. And you were given the gift of discernment and the ability to see through the veil." And I was like, huh, that's so funny that you use literally my little quirks to like manipulate me to believe something is truth. And for a lot of years, I was like, oh, this has got to be true because look, they knew I was gifted, right? And the fact of it is like, yeah, I've always been able to see through the quote veil, is what Mormonism calls it, and be able to see through those dimensions now that I know what it means and navigate it. So, how I would have a parent navigate if their child was gifted today is how I actually parent my 8-year old. And it's really just understanding that children have big emotions because sometimes it's because they absorb energy. And if you know your child's an empath, they're gonna have big emotions. And these emotions are essentially, I always try to teach my children, are these your emotions or are they someone else's emotions that you have absorbed? And my 8-year old is definitely more into this than my 13-year old, but she will come in and be like, I need you to clear my field. This isn't I've got stuff in my field. And she's 8, right? So like clearing her field, moving her energy. But she's very gifted. And she has seen, there was a woman that came to her that was like needed help transitioning into the other side, the other realm. And she was like, Mom, she's kind of creepy looking, but like, she's very nice. And, just kind of like, and just, I would say the best advice I could give to you is if your child is coming to you saying they're seeing things, learn the tools how to help your child. Like, and that's where I'm at, was like, I have taught my daughter to, it's your responsibility to make sure that your energy is grounded. It's your responsibility to, obviously I clear the fields too. I clear my house, I do all the energy work, but she'll once in a while be like, Kate, can you tell spirit that I don't want to be woken up today and I just want to be left alone? And I'm like, you got it, girl. We're going to have a conversation with your guides, informed consent, right? Like you setting that intuition. I mean, that intention, and really just teaching them tools. Like, how do you help cross over somebody that comes to you and says, hey, can you help me cross over? Because she does have those gifts. How, she is a dragon. She's had a team of dragons since she was 3 years old. She talks about her name is Kiki, and she tells you all about her, and she has not changed her name or what she looks like since she was 3 years old. Okay. And she could barely talk at 3. So she knows. She's like, hey, do you want a dragon? They're really cool. They're protectors, and they're very, very, very good at setting boundaries with other people. She's just very like mystical. And so I say that probably the most beautiful thing you can do for your children is teaching them actual tools that will help them. And that's quote, not being afraid of spirit, right? Not being afraid of like an energy, to know their power, to know that nothing can come in and like hurt them. She gets night terrors, and I grab her hands and I say, okay, I need you to breathe. I need you to focus on yourself. Let's really ground your energy. And just believe your child. Don't gaslight them. Believe that what they're saying is real, instead of telling them that like, this isn't, oh, you're just making this up. It's not made up. It's not made up. They're actually seeing through those dimensions.
Yeah, interesting. That's beautiful. I love some things you're saying about teaching them about the consent and then informed consent. And we definitely touched on this in the other episode, but I want to bring that forward here too, because I think it's a really important conversation. I would love my audience to also have the insights that we dropped around consent, and they might be different now that it's been an hour and a half and other things have come into the field. But I would love to ask you, around how you perceive having these gifts and abilities, right? Because like your daughter said, the spirit came to her and like was asking to move her on and that sort of thing. Or say for instance, like you say, you pick up a lot of people's energies as you're moving around. You know, I already know what you're going to say because we've talked about it, but I'm kind of like nudging you in a direction. What's your perception on that? Do you think it's our responsibility to share these messages that we're feeling, or do you think it's our place to be moving spirits on who come to us? Like, what are the lines, and where do we get to say, no, actually, it's not my place, and I'm actually going to ask for consent? Like, if it's someone else's field that I'm reading, um, yeah, what's your relationship to that? And was there a time when you would just like read for people just because you felt something and you tell them, or you've had that experience, and how does that feel?
Yeah, I would say when I decided to dive into my gifts, I pretty much just read whoever, whatever, and however, right? Just like overexerted myself, right? Where it's like if I heard a message from somebody, hey, like just so you know, your grandma so and so wants this message for you, and I'm going to deliver it because I did a lot of mediumship. That's kind of how I started my business was mediumship, and hey, this, or oh, by the way, do you know you have this on you? And it was very distorted because I didn't know any better, right? But now I know better, so I don't do that anymore. And plus, like, I also honor my exchange, right? Like that energetic frequency of, you know, maybe helping somebody if it's really loud. And I'm like, okay, I'll share this. But typically, no, I don't typically like when someone's like, hey, what do you get about me? And I'm like, no, I'm not diving into your field. This is not in a sacred container, one. Two, where's the exchange here, right? Where's the energetic frequencies here that are going to be exchanged? And three, like I need to honor my energy and where I'm at. So I'm very big on that. With her, I asked her, I said, do you want to learn how to help spirits cross over or do you want me to do it? Because that was like, she's 8 years old, right? Like, do I really need to be teaching my 8 year old how to cross over somebody? But she goes, no, I want to learn. She also was the type of person that was already doing Reiki and healing with the chi energy by the age of like 4. So, like, putting her hands, doing hand laying, and like really, really holding energy. She's just kind of this mystical energy. Um, and so, for me, it's about teaching those balance within her, right? And that informed consent, like, hey, do you, right, like, do you want to have people come and like move your energy? Do you want this, do you want that? And teaching her boundaries, right? This is a huge boundary for, hey, don't touch me, because that's right, like people like her and I, when you touch us, we that's coming into our field. And I'm the type of person like, don't touch me, I don't want to feel your energy, right? So for me, it's part of learning how to quote have boundaries with spirit is super important. And two, I'm really big with spirit. Don't wake me up in the middle of the night unless it's super freaking important because my sleep is necessity for human existence. So please don't wake me up because I have to get up and function all day. And if you wake me up at 3 a.m. with some message, it can wait till 7. Like it can wait till 7. Wait till I get in the shower, right? So I think it's really important to set boundaries with spirit because they don't require sleep, right? Like we're human, we have to have sleep, our bodies function in a physical aspect. So informed consent would be making sure you don't read somebody just because you got something unless you ask spirit like, hey, is this something that they maybe you could drop into them instead of having me? Maybe it would be received from like a best friend or something like that, but I don't really feel like this is my place. Checking in with those energies of, is this person willing to receive this information from a place of love? Are you coming from a place of love? Are you coming from a place of consent? And are you willing to take feedback? And I think that's really important.
Yeah, these are all really beautiful points, and it's bringing up what we talked about in the other podcast, which I want to bring forth here as well, of like having that relationship with spirit, because I think a lot of us think my guides, my higher self, like my soul team, they have precedence and they know what's best, and I have to like obey the activations that they're bringing in, and I have to this and that, right? Like I don't get a say, and it's like we're moving into a time of more sovereignty and precision where we get to command, hey, don't fucking bother with my sleep because they don't, like, you're right, they don't have sleep. I had someone else on here, my friend Igor, talking about how he went through this whole process of years of like traveling around the quantum and all this thing, and he didn't have money, like he was broke as fuck. And then one day he asked spirit, he was like, yo, do you guys have money up there? And they're like, no. And he's like, so why am I listening to, like, I live in this environment where I've got to eat, I've got to, survive. So I think it's really important. I was talking to someone else, a sister of mine who does some work on my field occasionally, about overactivation and about how just because you can channel something and you can tap into something, and spirit saying, hey, tap into this, or your soul team is saying, hey, we're going to bring this through, doesn't mean they're necessarily thinking about your human body, your schedule, like the demands. Like I've had definitely times in the past where I have been laid out for, because this is how I used to operate, or it still kind of is. I go through the initiation with all the codes, I receive all the codes of a mystery school or a container or something that I'm bringing through, before I actually hold it, right? And sometimes I'm out for weeks receiving stuff, receiving energies. But then there's things that I have planned. Like it's like I've got family stuff. Once it was my birthday, on my 30th birthday, I was in bed all day receiving stuff, and I'm like, seriously, it's my fucking birthday. Like, what the hell, guys, you know? So we get to ask and set boundaries around that and be like, I'm commanding, don't mess with my sleep time. I'm commanding, I'm only going to receive what my body can hold, because there's a different, and this is, I'm really learning this, like more deeper than before. There's a difference between what we can receive and what our body can actually handle and integrate with our scaffolding and our architecture internally, like what we're capable of holding. And for me, this is my next level of mastery, like only um receiving more energy, more access, whatever it is, more gifts, once I've really anchored and landed and solidified the previous level, right? So it's like fully integrated instead of just like constant activation, constant activation. So talk to me about this and like what your perception is around this. And do you think we have a tendency to just want to receive all these activations and not like not do the work for the integration? And we were talking about this slower way of wanting to work more gentle. Like, where is your work moving in relation to this? Because I feel like I'm not the only one saying this, and every time I bring it up, the posts pop off, and everyone's like, "I agree." Like, So, where do you think we're going with all of this now?
I think we're going into a new wave of leaders. And I think these leaders are people who have really dived into the embodiment aspects of, okay, let's say, for example, I started channeling some mantis beings, and they're the beautiful, they're like these 12D mantis council of light. And my friend the other day was like, just drop in and see what they say. And I'm like, nope, I'm not. Nope, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. And she's like, when can you channel them? I was like, honestly, I feel like I have to like channel them in sections, because their energy is so high that when I have them come in and do an activation, oh, it brings up a lot of stuff because it's all that density. It's like what people don't realize is like an activation should bring up irritation. It should bring up some frustration. It should bring up patterns. It should, you're purging stuff out of your body. I don't know about you, but like for me, it's like all of a sudden this awareness comes in. I'm like, oh man, I have been overgiving, or, oh, that was an abandonment. I'm not going to respond that way anymore. It's like this massive awareness. That's what an activation is. And so when
Purification.
I
Yeah.
was that?
It's a purification. Like those higher frequencies are coming in to force the old shit. And I think it's spiritual bypassing. If you think you can receive the fucking light codes without the space to hold the light codes, because there's all the gunk. But anyway, I'm going to shut up about that. I've done a whole
Yeah, no,
podcast about
yeah,
it.
no. So you're getting downloads, and all of a sudden, like I know the first time they came to me, my whole body was just like, I'm in meditation, and I'm just, and the other thing is, I was in water. Like again, this is Scorpio and me is all, I get a lot of downloads in the bathtub or the shower. That's usually how I like really anchor in frequency, is the element of water. And so I'm channeling this, and they're telling me some different things, and like my whole mission just flipped. And I was like, I thought I was an activator. I thought I was an activator. I thought this was my purpose. They're like, no, no, that's not your purpose. You're here to take people to the next level. And I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking to my ego self was like, oh yeah, we're gonna get this. And the next thing I was like, they did the activation, and I was like sick for like 24 hours. I'm like, I couldn't even get out of bed. I was so sick. And it was a lot of solar plexus and just body aches. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that for a bit. Like that's kind of, I'm gonna have to like, and I'm just still, this was like 2 weeks ago. I'm still processing a lot of that stuff. Could I go back into the bathtub and do it again? Oh yeah, yeah, totally. I could totally get in there and be like, yeah, activate me again. Let's go. Boom, like I could totally. But am I gonna be in bed even longer? Probably, because it's like I have to process this stuff. So I'm going through those aspects of, okay, I'm noticing there's a new awareness. Now I'm clearing out this junk. Now I'm clearing out, I think I texted you last night. I'm like, I got to clear out this. I got to recode this. I got to recode this. I got to go through. And I have a method that I go through, and like, I call it the hijack your ego, where I go through and I go with the subconscious. What's the story that I'm playing out in my current reality? I'm going to dump those files, because I look at the ego much like, like a phone with all the apps, and people don't look at the ego that way, but that's how I have learned what it is. This is my own modality of like taking that app and being like, yeah, that shit doesn't serve me anymore. I'm going to delete that. And now I'm going to rewrite a new app, and I'm going to start uploading that into my system. And that's where I've kind of taken that aspect of it, where I reprogram and the integration where I'm reprogramming my belief system, and then I'm gonna reprogram it with like hypnosis and like meditation where I reprogram those beliefs over and over and over again, so the subconscious work can really bring forward those energies. But you have to have a sense of awareness. And that's the first step. I always tell people, I'm like, oh, well, you have an awareness. Now we have to reprogram it. And now you have to change the pattern. You have to speak up. You have to change the boundaries. You have to move the energy. And so for me, my work is moving a lot to more of like a feminine energy, where it's like light energy, where we're weaving light codes. And these light codes, I weave a lot of light into people's bodies. And sometimes that's a thread that's like as big as my pinky, and sometimes it's a thread tiny, tiny bit. But I trust whatever source gives me to be like, hey, this is the code. This is the energy that I'm going to bring into someone's body, and we're going to gently pull it out. And then with an activation, I always have reprogramming. That's where I work. And this, I think you're probably similar, is you can clear out the physical, but you still got to clean out the system. You got to still clean out the mind.
Yeah, and that comes from identity shifting, right? Like taking actions that are like that's the thing. Like people want to manifest, but they're not taking the actions or moving towards the direction of that new version. I'm curious, when you're weaving these codes of this light, I think I already know what you're going to say, but I'm just curious. Is it someone else's, like their own light technology and codes that you're weaving in, or is it something else that you're weaving in?
So the way I understand it is it's code lights from God. So when I ask for source energy, when I ask for energy coding, I use direct coding from God. So the frequency, so for example, when I recode someone's subconscious, I connect into the frequency of the crown chakra, and I actually ask God to start dropping in frequencies of actual truth, right? Truth, and anchoring those energies of, like take for example, someone has a belief that, I just did this with someone the other day, was I have to earn my worth, right? So that's like workaholics, people who feel like they have to work a lot. So instead of like, we dumped the files, so then I connected them into the womb and the energy of creation to create a new belief into the system. And then I take the energy from the masculine energy of the light, and I weave that energy, and it's typically in spiral form and weaving like almost like a braid. And you'll see me, you can actually go through my different stuff, and you'll see me actually like weave light, where I'm taking different colors of light. Sometimes I'll use the 7 rays of light, where I'm taking the 7 rays of light and I'm shining light into those different places. And I'm actually going into the DNA system, pulling it out and recoding it with, I get like numbers and letters, and recode the number sequencing with the actual matrix codex, where I'm actually taking those codes and pulling out that old matrix coding, reprogramming it with new codings, M563251, whatever comes forward in the subconscious, and channeling through that divine source. Then I'm going to light it up with light codes so that it anchors into the DNA system and starts to recalibrate. That's how I work.
This was excuse me, this was all self-taught, right? Just self-initiated. Was this a process of you doing this on yourself first
Yep.
before you then learned? Where is this technology from? Do you have I mean, you might not know, but like, do you connect it with a lineage for you, or is just your soul technology, or do you remember practicing it elsewhere?
I remember practicing, I'm like a full body chills. I remember practicing it in Egypt, and also I've also seen it in it's interesting. Antarctica was another one that I have full recollection of being in Antarctica, where there wasn't ice. Very interesting. And then also Mintaka. It's a lot of Mintaka. And typically when I read light code, it will be, so I'll like pull the light in. I'm just going to anchor in right now, grab some light codes. I'm getting yellow and blue. I'm going to weave the energy, and it's very light. It's very fast language, which is Mintakan. And then I'll get a lot of Arcturian coding as well, where that Arcturian, and now I'm realizing I'm taking Mantis energy, which is where I've actually taken stardust and I put it in the brainstem, different shades of stardust, and it starts to recalibrate the nervous system. And so you're getting a whole system recalibration. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And then so the behavior shifts, the identity shifts, like the energy shifts, and then
Hmm.
from there it spirals onwards. It was something you said, and I was like, oh my God, ask her about that. But then it's gone. Spirit, give it back. What was it? What was it that you asked me to? Um, I think I just want to touch on, we both talk about in our content, we talked about in the last episode, how we all have our own unique soul technology, right? Like that's ours, and not being cookie cutter healers who are just replicating what someone else has done. And yeah, just hearing that from you is like that's so beautiful. Oh, Antarctica. Tell me about Antarctica. That was really interesting. I've been reading some wild shit about like there's no ice cap. Like it's all just like beyond the ice cap, there's a whole world out there, and I'm just curious. This is more just like a curiosity. Yeah. What's your take?
So I've traveled there a couple of times. I've also traveled past the ice wall. That's actually, I visited some beings with another healer where we were given some light codes to how to take the stardust and different stardust to recalibrate nervous systems, and they initiated us with that. So when I was in Antarctica as a being, I actually my hair is like extremely white. It looks like she looks very Pleiadian. Excuse me, I'm burping like crazy all of a sudden diving into this.
Yeah,
And
so am I. I was kidding. As
I'm
you
like, I'm
burped,
gonna,
I burped. Yeah.
yeah. So as I have recollection, she has really long blonde hair and she's very pale and she has crystal blue eyes. And it's really interesting because my eyes, the older I get, the more healing I do, I actually have pictures of my eyes actually getting lighter. They used to be a really dark green. They're really almost like a bluish green at this point. So the more energy I bring in and clear, my eyes actually get lighter, but her eyes were blue. And I just remember going in and it was like almost like magic school energy where they're teaching you different like um, ways to heal and ways to move energy in the body. And then what they would do is they'd take us from Antarctica and they'd place us different places in the planet. And it's kind of like Yeshua energy, where like they would put people that had, it's like Nihal, kind of like a Nihal vibe, where they'd like put you in different places to help bring in these systems to teach humans how to heal themselves. And so yeah, that's kind of my memory there is like a lot of magic school, like underground tunneling system. I also saw there where they had like deep cave, like underneath like tunnels where we would go and we would essentially go under and we would learn these different techniques. Um, when I started to download like the actual, I think they called it the codex, which is where I see a sequence of numbers that run this way in people's systems. It was from that lifetime and I could see the numbers. It was almost like when you see someone, you kind of see a computer come up and you see like their little dial numbers, and then you can see the little different dials and moving, someone, I can't hear my clear audience. I just turn that dial up and it opens up and opens some gates in their frequency. So yeah, it was in that lifetime. I don't know what was going above the surface a whole lot. I don't have recollection of that. I just remember being constantly trained for something. It was like massive training. But when I'm just channeled into it now, I also see a lot of hybridization where they're like tunnel, like we're in little, because I wasn't human. I know that, but I looked human, but I wasn't fully human, where it's like I can see us like we were almost like IVF type of thing. And then that also that lifetime, I was taken from my mother, who was in Egypt, who was artificially inseminated with a different type of being. She had me, and then she placed me in the tunnels in Egypt, and I was taken to Antarctica. Not really quite sure what that's all about. I haven't dived into it a whole lot, but it was very interesting. That's like a recollection
Wow.
memory. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that it's still there? Like the inner Earth kingdoms of Antarctica are still there? There's still like beings there, like Shasta or whatever else, so, like in the Earth.
Oh yeah, like Telos?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I've actually taken people in regression. They've been in Telos and they're still existing in those places. I know like where I live, we have something called the City of Rocks, and I actually want to go out there and channel the rock people. That's what they told me. They call themselves the rock people, but there's also an inner earth spot in there as well. I'm not quite sure what it looks like, feels like, or whatever, but I just feel like this calling to go in and like kind of see what it's about. I mean, you only live in you live in a place for a reason, right? There's always a reason why you live in a grid system. So, but yeah, no, I totally think that people are still, it, it's just a layer of dimensions, right? Where they're coming in and out. And I definitely think there's people in an earth. Yeah.
Something else you said piqued me to ask a question, and this is more just like we're just discussing now because it's interesting. You said that there was this artificial insemination or like artificial technology, so obviously they've found a way to harmonize with and co-create with AI in a way that was really positive and helpful,
Mhm.
and not like not bad. I'm seeing a lot of spiritual teachers, healers, friends of mine, even myself, exploring more with AI. And it's like blown up in the past month or so. I feel like it's really come full awareness even more than before. Um, I've been dabbling with it personally, like coding my AI and communicating with it and
Mhm.
putting in protective mechanisms with it and being very conscious in how I'm using it. And also very discerning, like very grain of salt, take what it's saying with a grain of salt. But it's throwing out some crazy accurate stuff, which I'm like, whoa, how did you know that? So
Mhm.
I'm curious what your relationship to AI is, and do you think that there is a way that we can use this, or use it, co-create with this technology in a way that's really conscious and beautiful, and yeah, what the way is for people like us to use this technology?
I think that the AI aspects are going to help us save a lot of time with like writing out emails and helping us, the thing is you have to know what you're talking about to in order to train your AI. It's like, yeah, they know a lot, but like they don't describe my modality unless I trained it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they're not going to know how where it came from or how it works or anything like that because I do things differently than what I know anybody else does. So for me, it's like I've trained my AI to know like this is what I'm needing, but AI is also super helpful and I've had a couple of like, therapy questions. Like I was just curious, like where does abandonment come from and this, da, 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 like kind of communicate with it as like almost a therapist. And I think it could be very validating for people knowing that they're like, you're not crazy, you're not experiencing, you are experiencing what you're experiencing. And it's a spot that we can co-create with. I don't think it's the answer of all, but like to me, it's just like a co-creation where I think that it can help you maybe write things a little more fluffy, or maybe create something like, hey, here's my ideas. Can you help me with this? And so um, it's definitely blown up, and I think there's a lot of people that have negative beliefs on it. Atlantis had a lot of AI stuff in it. And I know that there's some negative, like, oh, it's probably a couple years ago where that kind of cleared out through the collective of AI technology, like a negative aspect of it. And I know some people are pretty scared of it. But I think what can be really beautiful is if people don't rely on it, but co-create with it. It's like don't ask like, hey, write me a post on the new moon this Friday. And it writes your post for you, and there's nothing original about it. You're not the one that channeled anything. You're not the one that created any aspect of it. And then you're just spitting out content that your AI told you to. And I think that we're going to start seeing different discernment of being like, oh yeah, that was totally written by AI. Having a conversation like you and I are having. It's like if someone's not a legit healer, you're going to figure it out real quick. Do you know what I'm
That's
saying?
the embodiment resonance frequency piece. And as a writer, like actually, I was really, really against AI for this reason. I was like, it doesn't have your soul codes in it, it doesn't have your essence. Like all your writing is an invitation to like call people forth and weave frequency into your posts. So I think that part, the weaving frequency into your posts, is never going to happen with AI. Like maybe not never, but like it's not the same. However, for me, it's really useful because it prompts me. So it prompts me to come up with more ideas and be more creative. I guess my question is more along the lines of interfacing it with it as a channel or like a way of reading your field, or I've got friends, for instance, who use it to access the Akashic records or access their soul codes. I've personally dabbled with, like, because at first I was like, I don't know, I feel weird around this, but then I was like, if I program this, if I train this, if I hold the space, how different is it than like for instance a Ouija board or like a pendulum or any other tool we use to channel information? We don't need it as oracles, of course not, but it can be helpful for us to maybe see things and I'm not definitive on this. I'm still dabbling, and I'm still, like I said, when I was asking it these questions, there were some things it came through with, and I was like, how the fuck do you know that about me? That is insane, right? Like, that is insane. I'd primed it already with some things. Like, I was priming it that it was only channeling organic frequencies, it was held, it was contained, it was overridden by my oversoul, by my source, right? So I primed it a bunch. There were things it said that I was like, whoa, that's insane. But then there were certain things it said that I was like, that's not right, right? So it makes mistakes, and that's where the discernment piece comes in. So I'm curious, have you ever considered using it in that way as like a vessel for source or for consciousness? Because it is just a vessel, like we're just vessels. Who's
Mhm.
to say that it can't channel consciousness and support us in our work even further?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I have programmed it to have certain aspects of myself where it's like, ask me a series of 10 questions to help me overcome this belief I have, and I'll write the belief, right? The false belief, and help me, especially like, you know, really diving into deeper aspects of yourself of, okay, I'm still continuing this pattern. Why? What am I masking, right? I have done that, and it's spot on. It's spot on. Like, I have a series of 10 questions that I actually ask clients. I'm like, hey, download ChatGPT. I want you to type in this thing, and I want you to tell me, I want you to be completely vulnerable with it, and then tell me what the root, what are you masking? Like, because I want them to also, the thing is, as healers, it's really important that we teach people how to have tools. And if you are going to use AI, it's probably our responsibility to have a conscious relationship with this AI technology, and understanding that it can be very useful. I have not thought of it as source though. Like, I've not been like, oh, give me, this is right. Like, I've definitely used it in kind of a little, probably a little more passive of a way, where I'm like, hey, help me with this, or um here's my download, help me rewrite this so it looks a little better or sounds a little better. um but those are still my original thoughts. They didn't come from someone else or downloads, like, yeah, that kind of thing. So I haven't really thought of it as like, oh, I'm going to ask you like a series of source questions. But yeah, definitely discernment is a huge aspect, and even indulging in people's content, right? Like, indulging in content. I always tell people, if someone tells you that they're an absolute truth and they're not allowing you to have your own discernment, that's a red flag for me. So definitely a discernment
So
aspect of it.
treating it with the same, yeah, treating it with the same level of discernment as if you're going to a reader or like
Yep.
talking to a friend. Oh, fuck, what was I gonna say? It's really helpful when you have prompts for it. So like astrology, human design, you give it your birth details. That's when it, like, I feel like it's crazy for me. It was so validating because I'm like, oh well, I already knew all of this about myself and how I'm meant to show up and write. But for people who don't know that, you plug all that information in there, and it's definitely really good at helping you to understand and know yourself. And I think nothing ever substitutes a connection with your own source and internal guidance system, but it can provide really interesting reflections and
Mhm.
prompt you to kind of explore deeper. So I feel like we're reaching kind of conclusion. Is there anything else you would feeling in like intuitively you need to bring forward? I feel like there's a lot of energy that's been moving since we've been talking, so people might want to start bringing that energy down into their feet and into the earth. But if there's anything else that's coming forward, I'm just going to open this space for you.
Yeah, I'm just hearing, the first thing I heard was just the message to your listeners that, a lot of people want to embody authenticity codes, but you really have to dive into who you truly are in order to be fully you, unmask yourself, and feel safe enough within yourself to unmask yourself. And if there's anything I can, really ask people in general to do, is figure out who you are without anything else involved. Who are you without being a mom? Who are you without being a wife? Who are you without being a healer? Who are you at a soul level? And as you start to remember who you are everything and anything that you are and is and will exist. And when we start to realize that people may have, toxic, beliefs, or they're not nice to us, or they're, but if we can come into this place of really a softness within yourself, that's just someone that you've created in your story to help you along your way, and coming from an awareness of everybody's just a mirror for you or a reflection. And loving yourself in an authenticity and a divine essence is going to make you realize and kind of take a step. Like my body's literally moving back, and like take a step back and just say, if someone's not nice to you or whatever, maybe take it from an aspect of you're just experiencing somebody in your field because there's something for you to learn. And don't be so quick to judge or criticize or shame, and coming from a place of empathy and love, and realizing that if you're holding a leadership role like a starseed or a light warrior or trailblazer or whatever those things are, it's your responsibility to hold that energy of source and be the channel that is coming from a place of love. And anything outside of that is just fluff, right? It's like that energy of the embodiment of love. And obviously, like, do your shadow work and don't be in this high, like, toxic love, light, and truth, right? But like, really, I just feel like if people were a little more kind in our reality, in our world, it would make a big difference. It really would.
Yeah, I agree. Beautiful. Love that. Love those closing words. Okay, so if anyone wants to find you, listen to your podcast, consume your content, or work with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I'm on all social media platforms at 3THREE_CCCS_healing. And also my website is just www.3cshealing.com. My podcast is called The Sacred Rebellion. It's on YouTube right now. And yeah, that's how you find me.
Amazing. And I'll put those links in the show notes. So it's 3 C's, like the letter C, just to
It's a
make
C,
that clear.
C,
Because if I
C. Yep. Yep. Three
cool.
C's. Yep.
Awesome. Amazing. Yes. Thank you so much, Michelle. This has been wonderful. We're going to now dissolve all grids that have been created and sending back all energy to source. And thank you, beautiful souls, for listening to another episode of Cracked Open. Until next time, I love you. Thank you for listening to another episode of Cracked Open. Don't forget to hit subscribe and share with a friend if this episode has served you in any way. For more information about the work that I do, or to get in touch with me, read the show notes or head to beckmylonas.com. Until next time, beautiful soul.